Hello, and thanks for joining me on another edition of Real Money Stories. I'm your host, Jason Butler, and this week I've got someone who's in Mexico, and his name is Daniel Mangena. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
That's all right. Now, you probably noticed that Daniel's sounds like a London accent. So, Daniel, just tell us where you're in Mexico and why you're there.
I live in Cabo, Mexico, basically paradise. I get to look out at Land's End of the water from my house every day. And suffice to say, I got sick and tired of 4 seasons in a day, and I live somewhere now. It only rains 12 days a year here, so
really
pretty nice. Yeah.
So you're on the ocean there, on the coast there.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, look, before we get into your backstory, do you want to just tell us what you actually do now for most of your time and what brings you joy?
Sure. Well, I'm brought joy by supporting people expanding the life that they live. I've been in personal development, the esoterics, the mystical, the spiritual, the consciousness for about 20 years. I started my journey quite young. And over that time, I had some wins and some losses with myself. But over the last particularly 10 or 11 years, I've been crafting together something I call the Beyond Intention paradigm. And that's a 4-step model that's really helped me to do a lot more with getting real world results with a lot of these tools. But over the last few years, as things have been popularized since The Secret came out, I've noticed that there's been a lot of people trying to use this stuff and not really getting much by way of results. And I've made it my mission to show people that they can get results from this stuff and teaching that through my books, podcasts, speaking, workshops, and so on.
Absolutely. So it sounds to me like you're very much an abundance and a growth mindset person, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Good. Look, take us back to the early days then. So, this is all about, in this show, we're trying to break the taboo of talking about money. We're trying to share ups and downs and wisdoms and learnings and unlearnings. So, what was your earliest memory of money?
So I had a very mixed upbringing with money. My dad was successful very early. My parents actually came over as immigrants, not as economic immigrants, but education immigrants from Zimbabwe in the 70s. So dad actually did very well in property, and then lost everything over a period of about 15 years. So by the time my older sister, who's 8 years older than me, was getting into sixth form, that's when things started to go a bit downhill. So I came initially from quite an abundant experience, and then it kind of started to tail off. Now, we're not talking the silver spoon, but he had a few rental properties, had a decent job, educated. And then it kind of went more into a bit of a lack and scarcity around, I would say, the time I was maybe 12 or 13. So that was my background. Parents very, very strict Christian, so there was a lot of money's the root of all evil and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of mixed ideas and ideologies that were fed to me. There wasn't anything about things coming easily. It was all very much hard work. Very much black sheep of the family, talking about all this manifestation stuff. But crafting my own path over the last 5 years more publicly, I would say, crafting my own path. I've made and lost a couple of fortunes over my time, but this past few years has been very enlightening for me, because it's very different you being able to do something yourself and repeat it for yourself versus seeing something repeated in the lives of others. Then you know that you've got something real, and that's really actually helped me to live a more abundant life myself, which I found isn't so much about the money, but the quality of life. Money just being the medium through which you can choose what that quality of life is.
So let's just stay there at the moment, because I'm fascinated, as you know, about the role of money in people's lives and whether they give it power or not. And I've got a new book coming out next year called The Money Miracle, and I explore this a lot. This whole thing about people putting off their happiness to this day when they'll have enough, or they'll suddenly be financially free, which I think is a misnomer. But let's go back to that period. So you would have been about 8 or 9 when the decline was becoming clear, right?
Yeah.
And as an individual, you were at school, you were probably at the tail end of primary school. How did that impact on you, that kind of big, that changing of the guard, the tectonic plate movement of your parents sort of situation going from quite comfortable, if not palatial, to slightly more straightened and tricky?
Do you know the funny thing? It's only when I look back, I actually have a conscious awareness of it. Because as you know, it's about that time that we're really starting to get a bit more deductively aware of what's going on around us. So we did move house, but the house we moved to was a slightly bigger house, I think, looking back. We moved a couple of times in a short period of time. But I think when I really started to notice, because I was used to going with Dad to some of his rental properties, and then we weren't going to them anymore. I can remember conversations like with my older siblings happening, my sister having to move from private sixth form, going to a public sixth form in the middle of her education. And there was some disdain, there was like some stuff going on around that, but it didn't really make sense until later what was actually going on.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to, interesting, were you aware at the time, and do you now know what was the cause of your father's mishap with money, or the changing situation? Was it luck? Was it an external thing? Was it his own situation? Or was it a mixture of all those things?
I mean, based on the way that I look at reality now, and the model that's been allowing me to have repeat results, I think he just wasn't able to hold the vibration of it. He came from dirt poor backwaters of the countryside in Zimbabwe. He built himself up from nothing, probably got as high as he could go where he was, came here to come and expand his education, and build himself up from nothing here again. But if we're not able to hold something, it will always, whether it's by bad luck or whether it's by circumstance or whether it's by choice, we're not going to be able to hold it. And so when I look, and as I've grown older, I've had more real and authentic conversations with my dad. We've been able to speak more about that time. And the more and more I see it, it's just, he just wasn't able to hold it. And that's it.
And is that where you think that you talk about the vibration, being able to cope with it, what I call perhaps the equilibrium is a good word.
Yes.
The harmony of abundance and money wanting to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Do you think that that was behind some possibly self-sabotaging behaviors, not just of your dad, but which is often behind self-sabotaging behaviors of people who have some success and then lose it? When I success, I mean, I'm talking about financial and material success, and then somehow they sabotage it themselves, self-sabotage.
I agree with you 100%, Jason. I mean, at the end of the day, when we look at the flow funnel model that I teach, which looks at the different aspects of ourselves that are present in our human experience. We have our physical experience, we've got our mental, thought, belief experience, we've got our emotional, energetic, vibrational experience, each of which has its own backbone. Physically, we've got a spine. Mentally, we have our belief systems, the structure for that. Energetically, measurably, you've got your chakra systems where you hold and move energy through. If we look at even in the court of law, you can have a crime of passion. Our emotional state can affect our thought processes, and we have mind over matter. Our belief systems literally limit what we're able to do physically. So if we have a contraction or a limitation in that emotional, energetic, vibrational field, it follows on to our mental experience. And as it follows on to our mental experience, then it follows on to our physical experience. And when we look at our belief systems, and when we look at the way that we start making choices based on the unconscious mind that we're sitting in most of the time, of course, if somebody has a limitation or they've got a constriction in their emotional state, it's going to create limiting beliefs, and we're going to act unconsciously on the back of that. I personally don't believe in the idea of sabotage, strangely. I think that we never fail at anything, because the unconscious mind is like a Terminator. It's literally the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, always perfectly executing what it's been given to do. The challenge is that we're not consciously choosing what that end goal is. And so we're perfectly executing what we'd call failure, the opposite of what we consciously desire, because it's built into our unconscious program.
Yeah, that's right. The mind's a success-driven machine, and you put stuff in instructions, and it comes out with results. Yeah, I get it.
Perfectly.
So let's just think now about your teen. Now, the teenage years are often very difficult for people because it's you're developing your sense of identity, you're craving connection, not just with you're finding out about sexuality, and you're trying to sort of gradually get agency. I.e., in other words, you're starting to express yourself, opinions, control. How did you evolve your thinking? Bear in mind the backdrop that was your dad was going through tricky times.
Mm-hmm.
How did that manifest itself? That evolution of a teenagerhood of the whole thing of living in London, brands, media, peers. How did you have a part-time job? What did you do? How did you exercise a degree of control and evolution?
I had a couple of things going on there. I didn't know at the time, but I was late diagnosed with Asperger's. So I didn't really have much of a social experience. I understand that now because I didn't have the natural wiring for social experience. Yeah. So my social network really was immediate family members. And when my sister felt sorry for me, my sister was closer in age to me, she'd let me hang out with her and her friends. I then had some what I would call forced social circles through family members, religious community, mum's friends, kids that kind of had to put up with me. I didn't really have I've got two of my friends, Jamie and Nathan. We've been friends now for 20 years because I did get a job working in a cinema. I didn't actually need the job. I taught myself to make computers when I was 13. And I used to put them in the loot. You're from the UK, so you know the loot. So I'd advertise a configuration of computer in the loot. And then I would go and get the pieces, make the computer and sell the computer, make like 50, 200 quid on those. Then I found a company called Neotech that did unbranded laptops. And so I would advertise their laptop configurations and put a little bit of money on it. And they could do effectively drop shipping, but I'd have to pay them. They deliver directly and send me the
And how old were you when you were doing this, Daniel? How were
13,
you?
14.
Unbelievable. So your first business as such, your economic activity, your adding value for money was at 13.
Yeah. Oh, younger than that, actually. I had a tuck shop at school. We had a project we were supposed to do for I think it was year 9, I think, where we had to do an economics project at school. And I set up a tuck shop. I got my dad to open up a cash and carry account with Best Way Cash and Carry. I got business partners from my fellow students. They helped me put up most of the money to buy the stock. And I'd run the tuck shop at lunchtime and break time. I got permission from the head teacher. So that went on for about 2 or 3 years. I had the computer thing going on.
So you could create money. You were generating money from essentially nothing, right?
By
skills and bringing in investors. So that's an amazingly abundant story before you found all the other things you do. Mm-hmm. And how did that? What did you do with the money? Were you spending it, accumulating it, saving it? What?
I had no aptitude for what to do with money. So I really don't know what happened with it. And this is one of the things that's been in my adult life, part and parcel of my journey with money. Developing a conscious relationship with money, because I wasn't even consciously aware of the fact that I was creating wealth. It was kind of just happening. So I did everything for myself. I bought my own trainers for school. If I wanted like my Patrick Cox shoes, I got those for myself. And I could get the bus to school instead of needing to walk. And I could get the train if I wanted to go and see my friends instead of to go to get the bus. So we're not talking king's ransom, but my parents gave us quite a modest pocket money. Like I said, my parents didn't believe in handouts; they believed in hard work, and so we got exactly what we needed to get by. Not because they were tight asses, but that's just how they were brought up. You do it for yourself. So I was almost accidentally ninja trained to develop that level of independence.
It's a lovely story, though. I just wonder if it. So here's the thing: the money almost was to by default. You were doing stuff just because that gave you a sense of control and
something to do.
Sort of, it
wasn't about the money at all.
And the undiagnosed Asperger's, for those of us, and I include myself in that, who don't really understand it, we think we understand it's on the spectrum of autism. But how does it manifest itself in a teenager? Because that's a difficult time anyway in someone's life. So what does that mean? You just find it difficult to understand people, connect with people, emotional intelligence? What is it? How does it look and feel?
So for me personally, I've been really blessed. So it was really funny because I kind of skirted through life with nobody kind of realizing that I was on the spectrum. People either just thought I was really annoying or just would live with my foot in my mouth. Because I had pretty cool skills. So my upside, my Brucey bonuses from the Asperger's were such that people kind of just put up with it. So my memory is amazing. I've got pitch perfect voice. I can repeat a sound exactly, so I can do accents. I can sing very well. Give me anything systemized and I'll learn how to do it. just give me, if something's got a step-by-step method, I'll be able to learn it. And that's why I'm good at a lot of things, because I just go and find step-by-step, I can go and do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of social intelligence, zero. I had to go and learn, I learned social dynamics. Now there's more resources, but at the time, I just studied the pickup artist world. So I studied the work of the Mystery Method and Neil Strauss and Michael D'Angelo and David Dada on how to deal with women, because that gave me a baseline to work from to then go ahead and deal with humans in general. To this day, most of my friends are women, because I have a more natural aptitude for dealing with women, because I've practiced those models more consistently. So for me, generally, it was, I had no social dynamics, zero social dynamics.
But you learned the skills by finding a framework that made sense to you, and then you develop the nuances and the understanding and the humor and stuff. Okay, right.
But it's very, very deliberate. All social interactions with me are very deliberate and very conscious experiences. Anytime I start to go unconscious, you start to see the Asperger's pop out. So there's a lot of energy involved in holding social space.
No, I understand. So for you, structure, being deliberate and being intentional and being aware is clearly key to everything you do, right?
Yes.
Yes, I understand. So I love the story of the computers, and I love the story of the tuck shop. It's just wonderful. I had a guest on last week who did something about called Y jeans or V jeans or something, and he used to sell them outside his church. And he said the pastor wasn't too pleased, but he said at least I wasn't getting into trouble. I was delivering a service, he said, to the local community and making money from it. So I thought that's great. And if you're adding value, there's nothing wrong. So okay, just want to, before we move away from the teenage years, some people who grow up in very religious families, there is sometimes some, how can I put it, less helpful teaching. The Bible, for instance, and many religious texts do teach good principles about money, but there's also, how can I put it, some less helpful stuff that people sometimes causes friction or baggage or problems.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that your parents and perhaps the wider family may have had some, money is evil or bad or whatever. Was any aspects of that hanging around as you were going in the latter part of your teenage years that you had to sort of unshackle from?
I would definitely say that it's the work that I continue to stay on top of, because if there's something that you're around that much over a long period of time, the roots are going to be very deep. So it's an ongoing work for me to stay on top of that, to stay on top of those insidious little things.
The voice in your head sort of thing, yeah.
And also just being consciously aware of where I find myself moving towards. And I had a transaction because I reopened my consulting company earlier this year, and an old client of mine popped up out of the blue and offered me a job helping him fund an oil deal. And I found myself freaking out about where I'm going to put the money. And I just noticed myself, it's like, oh my God, if you're freaking out about where you're going to put the money, how is that going to be able to come together? That money's not going to want to hang out with you. And of course it dragged on and it kind of ended up dying a death. But, he's like, oh, when I've got another deal, I'll bring it. But it's interesting because I was very aware at the time of what was going on inside of me, because it's not, I didn't have an account to put the money in, but I started freaking out about, oh my God, where am I going to put
catastrophizing sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you sit there and for any of the listeners as well, if you start looking at when things have gone wrong for you around money, take a look at how you were feeling. Go back in your mind's eye. What thoughts were running through your head? What were you feeling at the point of inception of that experience coming into your reality? How did you welcome it? And if you imagine if the money was a person coming to your house and you're like, hi mate, not really ready to have you. Is that?
Do you really want to come in? Do you really want to come in? Yeah. You don't really, do you? You don't really want to come in.
And so that, I would say, like I said, it pops up now and then. A lot of the time I stay on top of it, and I practice something called pushing your edge, but not your buttons. So I stay on top of it. I don't sort of beat myself up around it. I say, okay, cool. I'm aware of that next time. That one shouldn't catch me again. But if it does, it should be a less unconscious effect. And we just keep pushing and seeing where we go from there.
Okay. And as I said, there's two ways of thinking about scripts that you learn as a child. You can either keep digging them up and be aware of where they're coming from. But sometimes it's best just to bury this stuff and forget about it and move on. sometimes it just depends. Everyone's different. So,
Mhm.
all right. So, tell us about sort of late teens, early 20s. Did you go to uni? Did you start another business, or what did you do?
I actually was. I don't know if you remember the grade scandal that happened when they first split A levels into AS and A2.
Yes.
I was that year.
Oh.
So I got into Keble College, Oxford, to study politics, philosophy, and economics.
Really?
Yeah, I got into Keble.
No, I'm not saying you don't look intelligent, but I mean, that's a big order to get in there. I mean,
it was. I worked really hard. I did my A-level economics in a year. So I did. So when they did the summer resits, I did the first round of exams at AS. So I basically taught myself AS. Yeah. I even got full marks on my macroeconomics paper. Knocked it out of the park. And then somehow they said that for my A2, I got C's, D's, and E's in my exams. I've never had a C in an exam in my life. Obviously lost my place at Oxford. On top of the grades going down, they only sent out 2 of my A-level grades to the universities. They didn't send out all my grades. So anyway, I at the time we didn't know what had gone wrong. So I just thought that I just cocked up everything. I was in tears. Mum and Dad, I said to them, look, no, I want to retake my exams and then reapply to go to Oxford the next year, because if you've been accepted and you lose your place, well, back then, but you retake your exams and you get your results, you can sometimes have a better chance of going back with the results in hand.
It shows you're determined, right? And it shows
exactly. Mum and Dad said, no, you have to go through clearing. So after a week of arguing, anyone who's got African parents know you don't argue. They kind of talk. You resist a little bit and then basically just realize that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
I went through clearing, ended up the only red brick uni that did combined economics that had a space left that I could get into by the time clearing had happened was Hull. So I went to Hull under protest, basically. Had zero intention of really doing anything. So I was there. I wasn't really going to any of my classes or anything. I was just very, very bitter, very, very bitter. And then, of course, a few months later, find out that it was the grade scandal thing came out in BBC, but they said that you could get your papers regraded. But of course, I was in Hull. You had to take your papers, you had to take your results to your sixth form college or your college the next morning by a certain time. Oh. Even if I take the fastest train from Hull, I wasn't going to be able to make it. So I called my dad. I was like, Dad, I knew it. I didn't mess up. I just need to take my exams. And Dad's like, look, you lost your place. Just accept it and move on. Get on with it. And sort of hung up the phone on me. Really? Yeah, I didn't talk to him for, I think, 18 months. I was very, very sore about that. And that made me really, 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 really bitter. So, I was already studying sort of personal development and mindset and dipping into the esoterics by then. I'd kind of been in that world for a couple of years. I'd been learning how to trade. And I basically just started trading from my dorm room instead of going to
trading what? Trading what?
Like trading the FTSE. Spread betting on the FTSE.
Right, so you're doing margin trading, yeah?
Yeah. I ended up then starting a business with my friend's brother, buying and selling electronics. So there was a company called Gem Discounts. You could buy wholesale electrical goods from Gem Discounts. You basically buy a parcel. It's a potluck. You don't know what's going to be in there. You break up the parcel, you sell it off. You can sell it to people. You can sell it on eBay and so on and so forth. So then that happened. We did that. Then I found a company that did auction cars, and we were doing that. We brought on staff, built up a successful business. However, accidentally broke the law in how we funded the business, because if I come to you, Jason, and say, here's a contract that you're investing in my business and I'm going to give you money back on that, that's against the law. If I come to you and say, hey, Jason, if you invest in my business, if you lend my business money, that's within the law. So we ended up losing the company. Everything went completely to pants, which was very sad. But I built up another business, a consulting business over the next
Before you move on, Daniel, sorry. So that business, when it went wonky, had you been drawing profits out? had you built some personal wealth, or did you not even address that? It just
Yeah,
was
but
going great.
I did, but everything got seized because the company was operating illegally. So because it basically, when you take investments from people without a license, the FCA basically marks you as an unlicensed investment business.
Yeah.
So
and that's a criminal activity.
That's a criminal activity. So everything got seized on that. I lost.
So you started again. Control Alt Delete. Right. Okay.
Yes. Control Alt Delete. Started again. Interestingly, because people were like, okay, this guy might know what he's doing. That really didn't go too well, but he might know what he's doing. By this time, I'm still only 20 years old, by the way, because I only did a year of Hull. I took a gap year that's basically lasted 18 years.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I look at 18. My mum still thinks I'm going to.
Don't rush it.
I did do my second year with Open University, and I will finish. I've actually set a goal to myself to finish the last year for you, because I realised actually, quick segue, a tangent as I call it. The reason why I hadn't finished is because I was actually scared of failing. So I've committed to just go for it regardless of what happens. So I've actually set some time aside to do that.
Interesting thing about failing, though, Dan, before we move on, is that one of the ways to get over this fear of failure, which is so endemic in lots of people, particularly younger people, is if we look at failing at something, or rather finding a way that something doesn't work, or misstepping, or an obstacle. If we just accept that it's just part and parcel of learning a new skill, or growing, or going beyond comfort zones, then we can actually embrace it rather than see ourselves as the failure. It's the thing we're learning that we've not quite mastered, and that's a different ball game, isn't it? A very different ball game if we can recast it, and that's something that's really important that I talk about in the Money Miracle. So carry on. So this second business, what happened there with that?
Oh, that did really well. I was doing consulting, but I was doing quite big ticket consulting jobs. That's when I really sort of started the consulting work, and found that people would pay me just to pick my brain. So I got paid just to think for people, which was really easy.
That's not bad, because most people can't think, right?
It's really easy. So I've got this problem with my business. I don't know how to do this. Oh, you can just do that. Oh, thanks. And then they give you money. It's
lovely.
Right. So we did really well with that, and then I bought into a mortgage and real estate business. That was 2007.
All right. I see where this is going.
Piled everything into that. I did have a little bit of a stockpile, but ended up in business again with someone a little bit unscrupulous. So he ran off with a bit over there. The property crash took a bit over there. A bit was lost in the fact that nobody wants mortgages anymore. So lost 600 grand on that. Cool. That time took me out, Jason. That time the first time I was still gung ho, I've got this, I'm going to do it. This second time I was like, I thought I got it.
Must have hit your confidence, right?
It hit everything. And that's when I actually, anyone who's ever heard me talking about me sort of my dalliance with the suicide train, that's when it came in, because it's like, have I been lying to myself this entire time? Because before then, before Beyond Intention, I was practicing a model called Vision, Purpose, Faith, Gratitude, which was basically the combination of what I'd learned up until that time. A lot of principles from psycho-cybernetics, the science of getting rich, Joe Carbo's work, Stuart Goldsmith, a fellow Brit. And this model was technically working. But what I realized is, it works, but it always ends up, when it works up to a point and then ends spectacularly, losing everything.
It's not so good at picking you up when you're in pieces. That's the problem.
Definitely.
And that often happens for people for no fault of your own. My last Financial Times article, it's called, I think, what did I call it? I called it, Can You Hold On to the Wealth That You Create? And that's a different skill to creating it. And one of the things is really just thinking about how you react to both problems, but more importantly, how you also react to successes and upsides. So in other words, you think it's going to keep. So you either think that the terrible times are going to continue forever and you're a completely terrible person, or when it's all going great, nothing can go wrong. You are the source of all the answers and you can do no wrong, right? So it's those two extremes, and that's what undoes people, right? And I only know because one, it's happened to me a few times, but not in wipeout territory. But also I've interviewed so many people, so I hear these stories, and success leaves clues, and so does failure. So how did you pick yourself up? You said that you skirted with the S word, the thoughts there. How did you get some professional help, or was there a friend, or what?
It was accidental, to be honest, Jason. A friend of mine, Caplice, actually verbalized it perfectly. It's the description I use now. I accidentally overanalyzed myself out of suicide. Now,
right, okay.
The cool thing about being in the UK is obviously we don't have guns, right?
Yes.
If I was in the US, it might have been a different situation.
Oh, yeah,
But in the UK, there was no gun.
Yeah.
I had this thing in my mind of seeing people with slip masks on their wrist, which means that that's not guaranteed. That might go wrong.
Yeah.
I had this horrible gut wrenching feeling of someone finding me, swinging and cutting me down, or trying to take pills. I was like, that just happened.
So you weren't worried about the actual should I kill myself or not? It was the implications of either not being successful or the impact on other people. Now that sounds to me like someone who is actually quite high functioning and is actually quite empathetic and has got quite high emotional intelligence.
No, Jason, the only thing I cared about was failing. I didn't want to get seen to fail at something else. I wasn't even thinking about anybody else.
So that saved your life, right? That saved your life.
It saved my life. It saved my life, the fact that I was terrified of the idea of failing at something else.
Yeah.
And failing and looking pathetic.
Thank goodness you had those thoughts. So, okay, you came right off the bottom of the ocean, as it were, metaphorically speaking. Then what happened?
Then I realized that the only way I'm going to successfully commit suicide is if I work out how to successfully commit suicide. Right. And I became determined to work out what was going wrong with my model so that I could apply it to successfully commit suicide.
Really? Right.
That's what happened.
Okay.
And in that journey, I actually realized something. There was a thought. It was a very faint thought at first, but it became a lot louder. And that's that I am responsible for this. And the thought on the back was, and you're responsible for everything else as well. And that's when step one of build intention started to take life, which is common denominator theory. Regardless of what we say about, people that will be in our life most of the time and things that will be in the, there's only one aspect that's present in every single experience in our life, and that's us. We are the common denominator. So therefore, regardless of how much responsibility we want to accept, one thing is certain. Logically, if I want to have the widest reaching effect of change, I should change me. If I change that aspect, every other equation changes. If I've got 20 relationships, I can go and try and change all 20, or I can change me. If I change me, every other relationship must change to some degree.
Well, who was it who said, sorry to interrupt, but who was it who said, be the change you want, be the change that you want, or something like that? It was the same sort of thing. You want to see in the world.
Yeah. And that's what happened. And then from there, I started building on that. This whole idea of acceptance kind of evolved. Then I read The Power of Now, and the idea of the present moment took life for me. But then I read Eckhart Tolle's work. I said, this is great, but what the hell do you do with it? How do you get to this now? And so I became obsessed with understanding what keeps us out of the now. And that's when step two of Beyond Intention came to life. And then I came into this idea of looking at time as being in the now, and the idea of gratitude being something that can happen beforehand. And in fact, if I'm grateful for something now, it's a way of me triggering a mental response of accepting its present awareness as an available possibility for me. And then the idea of the feedback loop from psycho-cybernetics, and the fact that the guiding missile doesn't go directly point to point, it's always course correcting. And so listen, step 4, thinking and feeling with awareness and being present enough to course correct. And over time, that took shape. Then around 5 years ago, I came upon the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I went to one of his events in Berlin, and I've still got the notes from that event. I was like, oh my God, this guy's actually got the science to back what I've been saying. I understand why this gratitude thing happens, because before I did gratitude afterwards. For me, that's one of the biggest game changers, moving gratitude to what happens before the event shows up. And the model evolved. The 4 steps of Beyond Intention developed into 7 levels of each one. I started to share my work a bit more with people. And then eventually, after 12 years and 5 drafts, put the book out last year on Amazon.
Yeah. Overnight success in 5 years. Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
So that book, what's that book called?
Stepping Beyond Intention.
And that sets out the framework that you've gradually sort of evolved
and a bit
over
more
the last
background. The background.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So essentially over the last sort of 10 years or so, you've been on this kind of gradual evolution of rebuilding yourself, rebuilding your wealth, rebuilding your faith in life. And where are you now? Why did you go to? What made you end up in Mexico? You know, of all places. I mean, I'm sure it's really lovely, but I mean, it's a long way away, right?
So,
or wherever it was you lived.
Yeah. So basically, I had my consulting work kind of grew from strength to strength. I rebranded it around 2011. And then I took on partners a few years ago, 2014, I took on partners. They actually, there are some Jonah and the whale aspects of this, but they basically stole the company from me. And I ended up having to start from scratch. But the interesting thing about the timing of that happening was that more and more people were saying that we're finding out a bit more about my Beyond Intention stuff as it kind of organically sort of word of mouth around my circles of people. Started saying, hey, you should be talking more about this. This is really good stuff. Hey, have you thought about doing that? And the book still was in this evolution that I get it ready and then it wasn't ready, and then it would be a sob story, and then it was, because I wanted it to be empowering, you know.
Yeah. You wanted it to be perfect. I
wanted it to be perfect. Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening was that I made a decision. I said, okay, you know, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna see about doing more, sharing this work with people. I'm just going to make sure I've got enough money to do it. And so that's when I started to do a kind of different aspect of the esoteric work, and more manifestation than just reality creation, but more the manifestation aspect. And then what ended up happening was I started to get amazing opportunities come in. And at one point, I basically had about $7.5 million in commission booked, ready to be paid on stuff that I'd manifested over the course of about 3 months. And then I went off to a meditation retreat. And then whilst I was at that meditation retreat, every single one of those opportunities just died inexplicably. One of them was a Hong Kong oil company, and they lost their foreign exchange license, even though one of the board members was like a politician in China. It was just really weird stuff. Anyway, fast forward a couple of months, I realized what happened. I was saying that I'm only going to step in and do this work if I've got the money to do it, which was meaning that I was saying I don't trust that God, the universe source, is going to back me up and support me and provide for me if I go and do it. And in that moment, I made a decision. I said, you know what? I'm going to trust it. I'm going to go for it. So I stopped taking new work and I started to wind things down. And then it was the 13th of February, 2018. I was in another retreat, and I had this really deep and profound meditation experience where I actually saw my life flashed before my eyes, and it was what my life would look like if I just did it now. I didn't wait. I didn't wind it down. I just trusted and just went for it. And I was filled with such elation and joy that I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I shut down the website, closed everything off. I had some savings, and I packed up. I was in the middle of buying my house in the UK. I've been hitching. I said, no, I cancelled. And I literally put stuff in storage, put some stuff at my brother's garage, packed a suitcase, and I went and started traveling the world teaching my work. And I was a happy hobo for some time. Over the course of that, I was invited to come down to Cabo to look at some places to potentially share my work. Came for 3 days. 3 days turned into 10 because I was in love with the place. Moved into a hotel. And ended up basically, the hotel staff were amazing. They'd let me leave my stuff in storage when I wasn't there without paying for it. So it became a very comfortable living situation. I lived across the road from the beach. Someone does my bed every day.
It sounds great.
And I did that. I lived in the hotel for just over a year, and then last year.
A year in a hotel.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Yeah. But I mean, I was traveling everywhere, you know, I was in different parts of the world leading workshops and blah, blah, blah. But I moved into my permanent place about just under a year ago.
So you've gone on a bit of an interesting journey there, and you're clearly into self improvement and stuff, and you've had your challenges, and you've made money and lost money and all sorts of stuff. So how would you encapsulate? Because I know you mentioned manifestation, and manifestation of money is an interesting one. It's a bit woo-woo for some people, but this idea of being ready to receive money, that money wants to hang out with people who are comfortable to receive it, right?
I love that
opportunities.
Analogy, by the way.
Yeah. So So how would you sum up your learnings about the kind of role of money and wealth and financial aspects of people's lives and spending as well, that you've learned, as we draw to a close today? So how would you sum up your wisdom to date?
Money's just a tool that gives us more choice. And it's not even really the money that we should be obsessed with. It's having the ability to create a reality that we want to live in, knowing that most of the time, money's probably going to be the easiest way to do that, because there are collective agreements around the idea of money being an easy medium of exchange. So I don't think about the money anymore. I think about the quality of life that I want to live. And invariably, the money to do that shows up, all the opportunities to do that show up.
So would you say then, just to summarize, that that defining the life that you want, and also possibly the life that you don't want, being clear about what you don't want, and trusting within reason that good things will happen if you put your first foot forward and do your best work, your best effort, move forward in the right direction, and don't give yourself excuses as to why you can't, or you've got to wait, or something else is going to happen. Is that essentially what you're saying?
For me, like going back to what I said about those aspects of ourself that make up our being, we've got the mental, we've got the emotion, we've got the physical. Yeah. Anything that all three of those aspects are lined up to happens.
Yeah.
And there's an analogy that I'm actually going to be using on my Do It With Dan daily today. It's that when we go to the beach, we know the water's going to be there.
Yeah.
We don't go to is there going to be water? Is there going to be water? Oh my God. It might be sand, it might be pebble, but there's going to be
that
water.
Ocean's still there. Yeah.
Because it's the beach. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
That's what the beach is.
Yeah.
So focus on getting to the beach and know that the water's going to be there.
Yeah.
If you set the intention, and I speak about intention setting a lot and give people a lot of tools on how to do that. But if we speak about the intention in terms of how I want to feel as I'm experiencing life in that place, then our reality will shape around providing the necessary elements to create that emotional state, that feeling space.
Yeah.
The water will be there at that beach. Instead of thinking about the money so much, think about the quality of life that you want to be in, and focusing on you being mentally, emotionally, and physically moving towards that, and the water will be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust into it. Look, Daniel, it's a very interesting aspect. How can people find out more about your work and connect with you? Just give us are you on Instagram and
I'm
YouTube
on Instagram. I'm Dreamer CEO on Instagram. That's probably the social media platform I'm most active on, although I'm getting a bit more tweety again these days. Again, Dreamer CEO. But my website, dreamwithdan.com, is the best place to get hold of me. You can, all the books are on there, and everything's on there. When this eventually comes out, this will be available for them to find on my website too. I'll put a link to it there. So
fantastic. Well, Dan, look, very, very interesting. Appreciate you spending the time with us today. I'm going to look with interest on your Instagram page to see if there's any pictures of this terrible beach that you live next to. That's awful.
You may see a couple. We're going
to have a look. But here's the thing. It's not about us being envious of the life you've got, or you being envious of anyone else. What you're really saying is you're living the life with intention that you want for this time in your life. And all you want is everyone else to live the life that they want for this time in their life. And that's what you're looking for, right?
You're great with these roundups. And can I say that article that you mentioned before, is there any way you can send me over a link to that? I really want to.
I will send you a link to it, on ft.com. And it was in the printed version as well. In fact, it's been pushed by several people on social media who never read the FT. suddenly, because I've been writing for the FT for 5 years, and I write about the emotional, behavioural and psychological aspects of money. And the funny thing was, it's got so much traction on social media, and it's not like I asked anyone. Someone did a 6-minute video montage explaining how much they loved it and telling everyone about the article. So here's the interesting thing that I took from that was that don't be obsessed about the platform of how people communicate. I think the key thing is, are people managing to share with you insights, wisdoms, and ideas like you are today with us, that you can take something from and make your own? And I think there's several things you said there that I love, that I think I'm going to take from this. So, Dan, lovely to speak to you. I'm sure we'll keep in touch in the long run. And good luck with the life in Mexico.
Thanks, I'll do my best.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. If you want more money insights, do visit my website at jason-butler.com or connect with me on Twitter or Instagram at JB the Wealth Man. See you next time.